Hello and welcome back to the Pulse with Willie and Al. How's it going today, Al?
Oh man, living the dream. Some construction going on outside. Big truck just drove by, so you know
Yeah.
the moment I don't hit mute, I unmute myself. But we're doing well. A little tired. Staying up late for baseball. And last night Monday Night Football too. So
Absolutely.
it's been good. It's been good.
I feel you on that, man. Well, I'm definitely glad to be back. We are bringing you guys our 17th episode. It's our Is That a Prince or a Toad episode. But listen, before we jump in, I just want to make sure to tell you guys smash that subscribe button, like the video. Let us know what you like and what you think we could do better as well. We're always looking to improve. So definitely appreciate all the support we are getting. And we want to be able to bring you guys more. So let's go ahead. We'll dive into some NFL content that we have. We're going to hold off on the MLB postseason coverage until next week, next episode that we have, just because we want to kind of get a good sample size of the games, see two games from each teams, and then kind of bring it in and give you a good comprehensive coverage on both. So let's start off with some NFL Sunday takeaways that we had. And really, I think it's just the knocking off of the undefeated teams. That seems to be both the stories we're going to talk about. What do you think, Al?
Yeah. Yeah, it was really weird. You and I both on Sundays watch a lot of Red Zone. But I in the second half just exclusively switched to watching that 49ers Browns game because it started getting real weird and wonky in the first half with all those injuries. And then it just got weirder and I was mesmerized by it. And it turned out to be a rock fight like we thought. And yeah, just wild ending to that game. And I think with Philly too, that was just like if you play that game 10 times against the Jets, Philly wins 9 of those games. And it was just the one time where Zach Wilson looked like a good quarterback, kind of, which was confusing. Yeah, and PJ Walker for the Browns looked like an all pro for a day. And it was just bananas.
Yeah. Well, like you said, both Philly and San Francisco lost on Sunday, and they didn't look great in doing so, but I think they lost in two very different ways. With San Francisco, what comes to mind is kind of the injuries that they went through, not only to CMC and Debo, but Trent Williams was out for a little bit, and then Philly just lost. They haven't looked good on offense all year. And when I say that, like, okay, so they'll have games where they run the ball extremely well with DeAndre Swift, and then they'll have a game where Jalen Hurts throws for 2, 3 touchdowns, and we're like, okay, the passing game's back. But I haven't seen a game from them where they put it all together. And I think this was kind of inevitable for it to happen to them. And they ran into a buzzsaw with that Jets defense. It proves, and I know a lot of people debated this back when I used to talk about Brady and stuff. Doesn't matter how good you are at the quarterback position, if you get pressure on them in their face, they're going to have a bad game. It doesn't matter what quarterback it is always going to happen. You see it when it happens to Lamar as a rushing quarterback. You saw it when it happened to Brady, Manning, Roethlisberger, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers. Doesn't matter who you are. Jalen Hurts is special and he's a good talent. At the same time, they get pressure on him and he starts to make bad plays. And even at the end, like the last interception that he threw, you could even see on that he was like anticipating getting hit. So he's feeling phantom hits before. Last thing I want to say on it, as I'm talking your ear off now, QB hurries and like QB hits don't count as sacks, but I think they almost count more than that. Because when you hit a guy, even if you don't sack
Yeah.
him, you're in his head. And there was a lot of QB hits yesterday on Jalen Hurts. So now that I just rambled there, what were some of your thoughts on that game in particular?
Yeah, you can tell Hurts. Also, them losing Lane Johnson, I think we need to talk about that as well. That was a monumental loss for them. And you could tell the moment he was gone,
Hmm.
the Eagles just looked like a different team.
Yeah.
Yet with Jalen Hurts, he just looks like have the old Sam Darnold quote. He was seeing ghosts out there. Like he, he couldn't, he wasn't even setting his feet. The moment he was snapped the ball, like he was just like taking off and scrambling because he was under duress so much of that game.
Hmm.
Like those three picks, I don't necessarily think they were bad picks. They were just, hey, the Jets are getting all this pressure on him, and he had to get the ball out 2 seconds before he wanted to.
Now, I want you to do me a favor for a second. I want you to close
Sure.
close your eyes, and I'm going to ask
Yep.
you something.
Hmm.
If Philly is playing the Jets and Sauce Gardner and Reed are not on the field, how many picks do you think they get against Jalen Hurts in Philly?
I would have said maybe one because
Maybe
Sauce
one.
Gardner's
Maybe one, dude.
yeah, like Sauce Gardner, he's such a big part of that defense, and the fact that he wasn't really there, like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, you got to give credit to the Jets, man.
Hmm.
They had a good game plan, and it worked.
The one
It
thing I
worked.
will say, and like we've heard it because I know you watched Hard Knocks and stuff, and I've seen enough clips from Hard Knocks to understand some of the things that Robert Sala talked about with this team, but he's got 7 guys on that defense that can rush the passer. And when you have that many, and I wouldn't say they're prolific pass rushers, but guys that can get to the quarterback. When you have guys that can rotate in and get to the quarterback like that, it gives you a distinct advantage over other teams, especially when they lose a guy like Lane Johnson. Now, teams are going to lose people to injury. It's going to happen. He's the best right tackle in the league. There's no dispute about it.
Absolutely.
So they knew that that was going to be the leak in the system at that point. They were going to be able to put a lot of pressure that way. But
Yeah.
my thing of it is the Jets defense is so good, and now there's even rumors of Rodgers coming back, and they're saying 4 to 6 weeks. I'm hearing, which is insane. He
That's
was throwing the
no.
ball on the field. I don't think that's it. Uh, is there a way? We're in the middle of October now, coming towards the end of it, right? It's the 17th today. Is there a way December 1st we see Rodgers back?
No, I really don't, because in the history of Achilles injuries, that's a 12-month injury.
Hmm.
Like, you don't come back in the same season from that. Nobody ever has, and I don't respectfully, I think that's dangerous. If he tries to come back from that, I think he's going to do some real damage to his body that could end his career.
Hmm.
I really do.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't want to see
no,
that happen. I want to see one magical
no,
season with him in a Jets uniform where things go the way they're supposed to. They already lost Vera Tucker to an Achilles injury too. Like they've got they've got some issues on that team right now, and if he comes back, they could be okay. But I don't know, man. I just don't
no.
I don't see it. But you
I
know.
think you're gonna this. I think this is the year you're gonna have to like live and die with Zach Wilson,
Hmm.
and unless I know the trade deadline's coming up in a couple of weeks, but like, I think this team lives and dies with them.
Yeah,
I do.
we know Kirk
Like,
Cousins isn't clear in his no trade clause. We know that's
yeah,
not a thing right now, unless something very intriguing comes about within the next 2 weeks. But I highly doubt that. He doesn't seem like that type of guy, unless Minnesota sends him somewhere sweet. And there's a team really looking for that, and they're going to bring him in, and he's going to learn a new system. I just don't see it happening, though. So I think the Jets are going to stay with Wilson. Wilson's been getting better too. Like
yeah,
he's not bad, but I just I think, and you did a good job of saying this is I think some credit needs to go not only to the Jets but to the Browns as well. We just spoke about this last week when we said, we talk about these great teams that were undefeated and stuff, and like we can't envision a world where they lose and stuff. But then here we are, right before our eyes, they become vulnerable, and I look at that and it shows that any team on any given Sunday can beat another team. And it
yeah,
also, for me, I love because the teams that when when they lost, it did two big things. First, it provided a lot of confidence to the Browns and Jets. Who were playing without their best players, right? Sauce Gardner, Aaron Rodgers is out too, but Reed on the other side as well. But also the Browns with Deshaun Watson. So that for me was a very big thing both of those wins showed. But second, it also humbles Philly and San Francisco, and I realize like not a lot of people find value in that. But these are
Yeah.
teams that we want to see later in the postseason. I know some people may not like Philly. They may not like San Francisco. I get that. But they are exciting teams with prolific offenses that we want to see later in the season. So,
Yeah.
in order for them to be there, these things need to happen. They need to deal with adversity now so that we can see them later. So, I'm okay with that. I don't know. I didn't expect it this week. Is it okay to say that?
No.
I just
Yeah.
didn't
No, I don't
expect
think
it this week.
no. I when we talked about the this Cleveland San Francisco game, like you and I both, you thought it was going to be much closer than I did because I just didn't see how Cleveland was going to score points
Hmm.
against San Francisco's defense, especially without Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
And they did just enough.
Yeah.
And there was bad weather, and it was San Francisco got hit with a ton of injuries, and it also I'm going to put this to bed now. The Brock Purdy thing, like, look, he's still a really good quarterback. He lost every single weapon that he had on offense, including his left tackle for a while. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. You could have been Tom Brady, and I think the same thing would have probably happened. Like, respectfully, like, sure, it's his first real loss, but like, I still think he's a really good quarterback.
I do too.
That's
Like the
yeah,
the talk is inevitable because they don't really have anything else to talk about on Sports Center about it. But like this whole idea of like whether he's elite or not, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. He doesn't give two hoots whether someone thinks he's elite or not. He's right back in the film room trying to figure out what he can do to prepare for this week, and that's the big thing. I loved what I saw from him in the press conference. There was no blaming other people or any of that stuff. He took full responsibility for it, and like this guy seems to lose with class and not blame others. What
yeah,
That's a guy you want as your quarterback. It really is. He's going to be
yeah.
back. He's going to bounce back from this. He's going to be okay. He's not dead. He's not injured. None of this stuff. Like he is going to bounce back, and so will San Francisco. They're not going away. They're too good of a team for them to just hide away and die at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's playing the quarterback in the NFL. Like you take all the credit and you take all the shit when it goes badly, right? Whether it's fair or not. Like that's kind of the role you play as a quarterback in the NFL. So
Hmm.
the fact that he knew that, he was like, "Hey, this is on me." Like, yeah, and he didn't look great, and he could have been like, "Hey, we lost all our guys." Like, the weather was shit, but like no, he took that right on the chin and was like, "Hey guys, that's on me." And you know what I mean? Like you can't that's what you like to see. So,
Absolutely, man. I was really happy, and like he's a fun guy to watch. He really is. It's as a football
yeah.
fan, it's someone that I can really appreciate and get behind, and not feel like I'm inconveniencing my own allegiances to my teams by supporting a guy like that. It's kind of like a family friendly guy to want to be able to support him being Mr. Irrelevant. So,
Yeah.
um,
Uh,
yeah,
Speaking of quarterbacks, real quick, shout out to Zach Wilson. Apparently, when Mama Kelsey's in the stands, guy plays lights out. Just saying.
yeah. I
Just saying.
mean, he
We have two games to look at now, and he's played really well in both of those. So
yeah, this is the thing. He is getting better, and I know I don't want to admit that, but he is
yeah,
improving each
same.
week. He's getting more comfortable. They're starting to feed Garrett Wilson more. They're riding Brees Hall more. He's making better calls at the line. He's not
Yeah,
making as many boneheaded throws. And, like, I don't see him willfully losing games this year the way I did last year. So I don't know, man. If he keeps continuing to play that way, this is a team that is going to be very difficult to beat. If he continues
yeah,
to play the way he is, they're going to be a tough out every single Sunday or Monday or,
yeah.
whatever day they're playing. But I don't know. They just need to continue to ride Brees Hall, continue to put the ball in Garrett Wilson's hands, and
Yeah.
I mean, the Jets D, their secondary's beat up and stuff, but they're going to be getting better and stuff. And I know it's been talked about on many networks, but the way they've played against some of these star quarterbacks, Mahomes, Allen, and Hurts, they've been exceptional against them.
Yeah.
They really have. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Also,
Yeah.
common theme with San Francisco and Philly.
Hmm.
Their special teams really let them down
Yeah.
this week. Like their kickers combined, Jake Moody and Elliott went 1 for 4 on field goal attempts. Like
Yeah. That's rough,
especially
man.
Jake Moody. Jake Moody went 1 for 3. Like
That's
especially,
just a
you know what I
tough
mean? Like
one.
you got to make those kicks, man.
He
You
is
got to
a
make those
rookie, I
kicks.
believe, and I know that's a
He is.
lot of pressure, but listen, you're playing for a team that's got Super Bowl aspirations. You can't be the weak link on that team, right? Like
Yeah.
you just can't. So,
Yeah.
one thing I did want to mention was, it wasn't an upset, but the Daniel Jones-less Giants, they almost beat Buffalo at the end of the game, and if I ask you, I know what you're gonna say, but it needs to be talked about. Like, how much of this is Dayball being familiar with the Bills? Like, I don't know, man. Like, what are your thoughts on it? As I sit here and try to fumble through like what I'm trying to say on it,
First of all,
right?
we're going to talk about the elephant in the room and the bullshit that was not called at the end of that game.
Hmm.
That pass interference call. Like you watch that. Like you watch that in slow motion. He's holding him the entire time.
Yeah,
He's not looking for the ball. Like that is pass interference. If that's the Chiefs, they get that call. But it's the Giants, so they're not going to get that call, and it's ridiculous.
yeah,
Now you can say, hey, it shouldn't have come down to that, but like the fact that they hung around with Buffalo for as long as they did is pretty telling. Like I think Dayball really got them hyped for this game, and I think Dayball was like, hey, we're becoming a doormat for everybody else. Why don't we not do that anymore? Because he has too much pride to let that happen.
So let me ask you this: like, how much of it is him being familiar with the Bills and like kind of knowing Josh Allen, knowing Stephon Diggs, like knowing the guys on that team?
Yeah,
How much of it is that, and that he's able to implement and kind of scheme out some of those guys?
I think is a decent part. I would give it like a 60% that was part of the reason. But I also too, it helps to be familiar with a team like that you were a coach for a
Hmm.
long time. But it also, I think Dable is just one of the better coaches in the league who can really scheme against anybody.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a great quarterback, so like he got the best out of Daniel Jones last year, and I think the more we're seeing is that season was a fluke,
Well, listen, if
is what that
you
was.
say he doesn't have a great
Yeah,
quarterback, he's got a $40 million a year quarterback.
yeah,
Better make him great. I mean, that's a lot of
yeah,
money to be paying. I think they're what 2 3 years that they still owe him.
yeah. Denver also has a $40 million a year quarterback, and look where that's getting him.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. He's I don't know. They got to get that figured out there too. But
yeah,
well, listen,
but I
yeah, go ahead.
but yeah, I was just gonna say real quick, I was impressed with the Giants defense. Like
Yeah, yeah.
they they made Josh Allen look pedestrian, and it
Hmm.
took all 60 minutes for Buffalo to win that game.
Yeah.
Like that was just a dogfight, is what it was. Like start to finish.
Hmm. Well, listen, let's jump into the Thursday night preview. We've got Jacksonville at New Orleans, and I checked a few hours ago. Hopefully, the line hasn't changed on it, but they were giving New Orleans 3.5. The over under was 39 on this. But this is a very hot Jacksonville team. They're playing very good football right now. You look at the way that they had good wins the last 2 weeks, right? They beat Buffalo in London, kind of shocked them. Very surprised with that win, and then they come back. They beat the Colts and seemed to beat them pretty convincingly. So,
In fairness, the Colts didn't have Anthony Richardson. Like,
yeah, I know. It's funny you say that because now there's danger of Jacksonville not having Trevor Lawrence, right? So it's
yeah, yeah, it looked like he didn't practice on Monday. No word yet if he's practicing today, but I my assumption is he's going to play, but I can also see kind of the Jags just kind of punting on this game and being like, you know what, we're going to give him the extra rest and just let this game let the chips fall where they fall in
Yeah,
this game because I mean, like New Orleans is beatable.
when
They
does
are.
Jacksonville have the bye? I guess that's kind of a good question because with what they have going on there, if they're able to rest him this week and maybe they got to bye next week or something, it could be beneficial for them. But I feel like it's a few
They
weeks
have a
out,
bye in
right?
week 9, so
Week
so
nine.
they play the New Orleans this week, then they're at Pittsburgh next week, and then they have the bye.
I'll tell you that's a rough game to go at into the bye with, right? At Pittsburgh, like Pittsburgh's kind of been run over this year, not playing as well as they want. The last thing you want to do is get hurt going into the bye
Yeah,
week, and
I think you know what I think now that I look at the schedule more, I think they're going to rest him. I think there's no sense in having him rush him back on 4 days.
mhm.
Like let him get the 10 days rest so he's good for Pittsburgh because that defense that's gonna be a tough game,
This division is
and
for the
then get the bye
taking
week.
too. Like they should be able to have a stranglehold on this division. I know Houston's up and coming. Indy's done for the year with Richardson being shut down. And I hate to say that because Gardner Minshew is a serviceable quarterback, but I just don't think they have enough on that team to be able to do it. And Tennessee, dude, we could be sitting here with Tennessee with no one at quarterback and then still being on the verge of cracking the playoffs. That's how good Vrabel is of a coach. So it's, I really think Peterson's going to get them in the right position to be able to move them forward, and secure this division. It's just
It it
they need
does look like
Lawrence.
with Tennessee,
Hmm.
real quick, it does look like a couple hours ago they announced that Tannehill's going to need surgery on that ankle.
Oh man,
So I think you're going to see a lot of Malik Willis. So
yeah, I don't know. That doesn't.
have fun with that.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good. I'll tell you. Speaking of Tennessee, and I got to throw it in here. I don't know if you saw like the fumble they had on special teams.
I sure
And
did.
oh my God, and the guy came over and sat down on the bench, and Hopkins gets up and just walks away, dude. Like, now I interpret that in two different ways. One, the way social media does, right? That he's just being a jerk and like leaving this guy. The other way, I actually, when I watched the video, the idea that I got from it, or the message I got from that, was he got up and left so that the guy could kind of be alone with his own thoughts, right? And like,
Yeah,
when you've disappointed your team like that, the last thing you want to do is have people there being like, dude, you kind of messed this up for us. Like, bonehead
I
play.
agree.
Yeah.
I think Hopkins was just trying to give him some space,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
because we've all been there, like in team sports where we did something like that, like fucked it up for our team, and you're
Yep.
like, I cannot sit near anybody right now. I need to process this alone, and no matter what anybody says, like it's not going to fix anything. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with you. I think Hopkins was just trying to give him the space, but it still looked funny as hell.
Yeah, it did.
I'm going to be honest with you. It was just pure unintentional comedy, and I'm here for it.
Yeah. Well, listen, one thing back on Jacksonville real quick that I wanted to ask you about, because you had brought this up before we started recording about Derek Carr and kind of how well he threw the ball last week in terms of yardage. Like on the stat sheet, it looked really good, but we saw a lot of bad throws if you're watching the game. Jacksonville defense gave up a lot through the air to Gardner Minshew last week. They had 3 sacks, 3 picks. Like that looks good on a stat sheet, but if if you're giving up that much through the air, it's tough. Is it like that bend but don't break type defense, and you're hoping to be able to get the sacks and the picks and the turnovers, or like what is it that is that beneficial for you? Like I could see this working for Jacksonville, but I could also see this working heavily against them because Derek Carr is a guy that airs the ball out.
Yeah. So Derek Carr is good between those 80 yards from the 20 to the 20.
Yep.
Those are where that's where he excels. And I mean, like if you look at it, like New Orleans, they had 4 field goal attempts,
Hmm.
which tells me that, like, granted, their kicker missed 2 of them. So let's start there. But also,
Yeah.
like, they're just a team that, like, they're just gonna settle for a lot of field goals. They do. That's what they do because for the weapons that they do have on this team, Derek Carr can't seem to find the end zone. He can't. Like he'll drive them all the way to the 20, and then those drives always stall out.
Which
They do. And
is crazy.
it's
Like
rough.
if I told you that like okay, there's an opening at the quarterback position in New Orleans, and you said, okay, well, who are the weapons going to be? And I told you a healthy Michael Thomas because he's been healthy this year, Chris
Mhm.
Olave, and Alvin
Yep.
Kamara, you would say, and Rashid Shaheed as like your slot receiver, who's played very
Sure.
well this year, but like played well in this game too. But like if you would say like that would be an attractive spot for a good quarterback to be. Like
Yep.
you'd
Yep.
think, okay, well that's going to be a pretty good offense. But
Yeah. If you had told me that that team was going to, uh, that you, if you gave me those players and you're like, hey, they're all on one team,
mhm,
I would have suggested that this team would have been like, I don't know, 4-2,
yeah,
5-1. They're 3-3,
yeah,
and they're not very good. I know we all thought that this was the year that they were gonna, win the division, and the NFC South is such horseshit
yeah.
that like they still could, but man, it's not good. It is not good with that team.
Yeah, it's I feel like their defense gives them a chance. They just need comparable play on offense to keep them in games. And when
Yeah,
you're kicking 4 field goals in the red zone or having 4 field goal attempts in the red zone, I don't want to say kicking as in you made them, but when you're attempting 4 field goals in the red zone, that's just not beneficial for your team at all. It's not a way
yeah.
you got to be able to put up points, and it brings me to the main question. And I'm sorry for beating around the bush here, but is Derek Carr washed?
Oh, I have been on the train for a while that he's not a good quarterback. He's not. I will say this. I heard an interesting stat that he has had four different head coaches and four different offensive coordinators in his time in the league. And he's been in this league for about what? Less than 10 years?
Yeah.
Like that's not great. And respectfully, like he hasn't had really a good head coach. Like no offense to John Gruden, but like his time with the Raiders, he was ass.
Well, think about Derek Carr for a second, right? Like, okay, so he had Amari Cooper there for a bit. Who Amari Cooper's a good receiver, right? Not a
Mhm.
diva at all. Like he's the opposite of a diva. The guy just gets out there and works. He doesn't put up ridiculous numbers like he used to, but still a good receiver in the NFL. He had Antonio Brown for a day or two.
Yeah,
He had Devonte
yeah,
Adams there, right? Like who was his college teammate and played very well with him last year, and then ended up getting benched. But I don't know, man. Like I think if you give him some of the different coaches in the NFL, like if I see him in an Andy Reid organization, I feel like he would be much better as a quarterback. You give him a guy
yeah.
like Shane Steichen or I'm shorting out on the name right now, but the guy that was the quarterbacks coach in Indy when Manning was there, he was a great quarterback coach as well. Like he was able
Yeah.
to produce and get production out of quarterbacks. I just think like coaching has a lot to do with it too.
Yeah, because like if you just blindly looked at his stats, he has almost 37,000 yards passing and 222 career touchdowns.
Hmm.
If you had told me, like just based on those blind numbers, I'd be like, oh, this dude's won at least a Super Bowl and he's a really good quarterback. But no, it's it's Carr. That's Carr's numbers. The thing is, he's also been sacked 281 times.
Yeah.
Like the dude loves getting sacked. Like it's him and Joe Burrow.
Well, this is the other thing too. I'm not sure fully, and again, I'd have to go back and look each year in and year out to see how good his offensive line is. But I know he doesn't have a great one this year. Man, they had 8 quarterback hits on him last week alone. I mean, it's eh, when you're getting hit all over the place like that, it's tough for you to be able to do your job. Now, the bad throws, the miscues, that's on him. That's
Yeah,
definitely on him. But you got to give a guy protection, and it's not all equal in the NFL, right? Uh, You look at some guys like you could talk about the Bears being terrible, but when Justin Fields is taking 5.5 seconds to throw the ball, that line has done their job. That
yep,
line's done their job, right? Like you give them some of these quarterbacks three. You remember how quick Brady was to release the ball? And granted, it's super funny because I think Brady actually holds the record for being sacked the most times, but that's because he played for 50 years. Like
yeah,
you look at how fast he was releasing the ball. You have to be able to do that in this league. It just, I don't know. I want to see Derek Carr do better. I really do.
Yeah.
Kamara's looked very good since he came back, and I wouldn't say he's the best in the NFL. I'm not saying that at all, but he's looked much better than I think he has in the last 2 years for New Orleans. So I really like what I'm seeing out of this team. Chris Olave has been playing well too. They can't seem to get the ball in his hands enough. That's a guy that in my mind, Chris Olave needs 12 to 15 targets a game.
Yeah.
At least, man. Like, he's a playmaker on your team. It's like they don't use him enough.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that goes to, yeah, like you said, with their coaching, like respectfully, Dennis Allen is not a good coach.
Yeah.
He's not. And like some of the coaches that he's had, like Derek Carr has had, he just hasn't had good coaches. Like the dude in his 10 years in the league, his teams have only had 3 500 or better records. And
Well,
he's been to 2 playoff games,
that
two
that's a
wild card games, and he's 0-2.
that's another thing too, right? Like looking at this, I feel like New Orleans they should have been the favorite this year in the NFC South. Like the with him coming in and the
Yeah.
aspirations that they had for this team, but you're looking at it now, and I'm like, we're slowly watching their playoff hopes kind of go away. And as you look at this, you're seeing teams that like Atlanta that I really didn't feel that good about that are playing much better football. And granted, they added Bijan Robinson. I get that, right? Like he's a stud. I love watching him. Every week, I'm looking for that vertical clip from the sky cam from him, right? Like I love watching that guy. But Atlanta looks like a better football team. Tampa Bay, as bad as we thought they were going to be, they look like a better football team than New Orleans right now.
Yeah.
So for me, like, is New Orleans and Dennis Allen able to get this back on track this year, or even in this game? Do you think like I think their best hope in this game is maybe that Trevor Lawrence doesn't play?
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly, like, in the NFC South, I think it's between them and Tampa because respectfully, I don't trust Desmond Ritter as a quarterback. I
Hmm.
don't. I'm out on him. I've been
Yeah.
out on him. He's just not great. But I yeah, I agree with you. The only way that I think New Orleans has a chance in this game is if Trevor Lawrence doesn't play, and then it becomes this weird like 15-12 game.
Hmm.
It's something weird where there's just like everybody's just kicking field goals. I think that's really their only way of winning.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you say? What do you have for a score for this?
I picked this game as if Trevor Lawrence was playing.
Hmm.
I
Me
think it's going
too.
to be 27-15
Yeah, I
Jacksonville.
picked 24-20, so we were pretty close to each other on that.
Yeah,
I have Lawrence playing in this, but we'll see. Like I think you're right, man. You brought up a good point about them wanting to rest him, kind of give him the 10 days, then coming back strong against Pittsburgh. But who knows? We should find out within probably tomorrow exactly what they
yeah,
plan on doing. But maybe they pull the card like, hey, listen, we're not going to release it till Thursday, and kind of set back New Orleans in terms of how they can defensively scheme against it, right? Because there's only so much
yeah,
you can do. But I guarantee New Orleans, they're smart enough that they're going through right now and saying, listen, if he doesn't play, things are going to be easier, but we need to prepare for the backup. Bethard, I think it is. Um,
yeah.
so anyhow, well, moving on real quick. We'll cover some fantasy football real quick because there's not much to say about that. It was a rough week for fantasy football. I needed going into the Monday night game. I just needed a little bit of production out of a couple guys, and it didn't work out. I ended up losing by 12 points in two different leagues, which really sucked. But um, just looking forward on it, there's six big teams that are going to be on bye this week. Cincinnati, Dallas, Tennessee, the Jets, they get to go into the bye week after that big win. Carolina and Houston as well. So
Yeah.
some waiver wire pickups that I was looking at. Sam Howell, if he's still available, might be a good streaming option this week. You've got Jordan Mason and Elijah Mitchell with McCaffrey doubtful to play. Michael Mayer, a tight end from Las Vegas, he's been seeing more production recently, and he's a stud. I don't know if you've watched much of him, but that guy's
Yeah, yes.
he's a man. So, and then just two other guys. Listen, if they're still there, probably not, but in deeper leagues, these guys definitely aren't there, but maybe they're on the waiver wire for you. Rashee Rice and Josh Downs. Rice is definitely creeping into the wide receiver number one territory there in Kansas City, and Josh Downs, they're going to rely on him a lot as the slot receiver in Indy now. So.
Yeah, Rashee Rice looks like the first reliable receiver besides Kelsey that they have in
Yeah,
Kansas City.
yeah,
Which,
absolutely. And
yeah,
he actually seems like he's not one of those guys that's just all hype. Like Tony, Sky Moore, I hope they cut those guys after the season. I'm so sick of hearing about them and like how, oh, people haven't given them a fair shot and stuff. Trash. Move on from them. Trash. Let a team like New England pick them up and see how they do with them. So I just man, I'm so bothered by that. But just wanted to round out as well and let you guys know another team was chopped in the Guillotine League this week, but it was not me. I'm actually the top point scorer in the whole league, which is kind of crazy. I had a monster week this week, but my team is very well situated to be able to go deep into this Guillotine League. It could be any week though, right? You could have a bad week. I've just have structured my team specifically to be able to handle like a lot of guys that get receptions in their respective team with Cooper Cup, Keenan Allen, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. They're the main target grabbers for their team. So I've definitely done very well with that, and I've been very lucky with Kamara coming back. I made it through that, and then Mostert as well. And Jalen Hurts, like I feel like hasn't been playing up to snuff, but he's going to get things figured out. So I feel like that
yeah.
team is definitely very dangerous. Um, but I need a tight end, so I'm hoping someone gets cut next week that has a good tight end. My buddy's got Travis Kelsey and Mark Andrews, so John, score the lowest points, and I'll take Kelsey from you. So, but anyhow, but anything else you wanted to say, Al, before we wrap up here?
No, like we said towards the top, we're going to come back. We're going to back on Friday's episode, um, which we record on Wednesdays. So we're going to talk a lot more about baseball. When we record tomorrow, each team will have played 2 games. So we can really kind of break down the LCS series so far and what we like, what we don't like, where do we think it's going to go from there.
Mm-hmm.
Philly, Arizona play tonight. So, like I said, so we'll know that. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, we'll rock out 2 NFL games tomorrow for Sunday. We'll talk about
Yep.
them, break down the matchups and stuff. But yeah, I think it's good. We made a good decision with that. I just want to make sure that we got enough to cover in terms of the baseball game. So
Yeah.
and a 2 game sample size is pretty good. Gives us a lot to talk about. So
Yeah.
but yeah, man, another great episode. We appreciate it, guys. Like I said, subscribe to the channel, like the video. Keep up the support. We really appreciate it. If you start slacking on the support, we'll come after you. But keep letting us know how we can improve, how we can do things better. And again, I appreciate it. I love you, Al.
Willie, I love you too, man. As always, it was great talking to you and stay safe, man. I love you.
All right, bro. You have a great night. Take care.
You too, buddy.